Directed by Ron Howard, the documentary 8 Days a Week chronicles the Beatles during their touring years, starting in Hamburg in August of 1960 through their final performance at San Francisco's Candlestick Park on August 29, 1966. Using newsreel, archival, and home movie footage, the audience is given an inside glimpse into life on the road at the height of Beatlemania. Howard interviews Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr for their views looking back on those days and uses archived interviews with George Harrison and John Lennon for their recollections. The film presents those days in a historical context against the events that not only shaped America but the world. Close Beatles associates Derek Taylor, Neil Aspinall, and George Martin are featured in new and archived interviews that detail what it was like to work with them at the time. One of the real treats is the segment with director Richard Lester, who gives his account of making their two feature films, Help and A Hard Day's Night. Interviews with Whoopi Goldberg, Sigourney Weaver, and Elvis Costello tell of their first experiences hearing the Beatles and what it was like to be swept up in Beatlemania. But a great inside view of the band is given by reporter Larry Kane, who was assigned to follow the Beatles on tour during their first trip to the US. Kane gives a rare glimpse to the often claustrophobic atmosphere that the group often dealt with when they would be restricted to traveling from limo to hotel to gig, then back to hotel. Through Kane's recollections, you feel the grind wear on the band, as the relentless work schedule between touring, shooting their two feature films, A Hard Day's Night and Help, and recording takes a toll on them. This is a documentary that does what very few seem to have done up until now, to tell the story of those early years not from the outside, but from the inside. The film uses mostly archived news and television footage, but it also uses home movie footage shot through handheld cameras. The film, along with the audio, has been painstakingly restored. Though many will attest to having seen the Beatles, but not actually having heard them, thanks to the newly enhanced audio, they have never sounded better on stage. Some of the footage has not only been restored, but some of it has also been colorized. Footage from their first US concert in Washington, D.C. has been digitally restored and color added, as was their press conference at Kennedy Airport when the band first arrived on February 7, 1964. Never before seen photos from concerts are spread throughout the film, and as their final concert draws ever closer, there's a mounting tension that you finally feel reach a breaking point as they're loaded into the back of a Loomis armored car at Candlestick Park. Yet the story doesn't end with their final gig, and the film gives you a sense of closure to that era, delving into their personal lives as they start to explore other interests, continuing to work in the studio, and the relief in knowing that they wouldn't have to put up with touring any longer. But the real reason to see the film in a theater is that after the end credits, in the theatrical version, the 30-minute film of the Beatles' 1965 Shea Stadium concert is shown fully restored in spectacular 4K quality. The quality of the restoration is outstanding. A crisp, clean picture accompanies the newly enhanced audio track of the concert. The Shea Stadium footage will not be a part of the DVD or streaming release, which would seem to hint that it may receive a standalone release at some point. For this alone, it is definitely worth seeing in a theater. I could go on, folks, I really could. Director Ron Howard, with the help of Giles Martin, has outdone himself with this project. He has delivered one of the best standalone documentaries about the band since 1982's The Complete Beatles. It captures a moment in history from a more innocent time that will never be repeated. For those who remember them, they'll be transported back to a simpler yet more complex time that helped shape their lives. For younger viewers who are curious to know more about the band, this will make a great history lesson. This is a film that can be enjoyed by both fans and non-fans alike. The only real problem with the film is how to give it a final rating. It does so many things right that it's difficult to find anything wrong. Granted that most of the material has been covered before, but it is executed remarkably well. It is indeed one of the best Beatles-related documentaries, and even though Anthology was deeper, it's still completely satisfying and never once makes you feel shortchanged, nor does it make you feel anything was left out. The most difficult part for me is filtering out any personal biases and giving it an honest rating for what the film actually is. Ron Howard's 8 Days a Week gets 5 out of 6 Chewbaccas. That's it for now. See you next time.
Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the Nets are gonna kick in. My